There has been a lot of negative media coverage of Ben Carson in the last 10 days. And part of this is driven not by the earlier questions about his life story, which I thought he handled pretty well. And it turned out that the news organizations that had thought they had found major discrepancies in things that he had said or written about his life didn't quite have the goods. And Carson pushed back on that, I thought, very effectively. But since the Paris attacks and then the bombing or the hostage takeover in Mali, I mean, the major focus of this campaign for now has shifted to terrorism and ISIS and what kind of military response the United States might make. And in that process, there have been criticisms of Dr. Carson about how much foreign policy knowledge does he actually have, what would he do, would he be aggressive enough. One of his own informal foreign policy advisors, Dewey Claridge, seemed to question his state of knowledge on the record in an interview with the New York Times, having been referred to Claridge by a top advisor to Ben Carson. So that prompted a tweet that I found intriguing, and the tweet came from Ted Frank, who says, "Why didn't you say the high negative rating for @RealBen Carson last week was due to a, quote, high-tech lynching by CNN and Politico?" Well, funny you should say that, because first of all, obviously that's your opinion that it's a high-tech lynching. But I did ask Dr. Carson when I interviewed him in Milwaukee around the time of the Fox Business debate, I said that some conservative commentators, sir, have said that you've been subject to a journalistic lynching. High-tech lynching is a phrase famously associated with Clarence Thomas when he was being attacked during his confirmation hearings as a Supreme Court justice. So was this a journalistic lynching? And I asked Dr. Carson the question twice, because in both instances he said, I hope not. I don't think race has anything to do with it, or I hope that race doesn't have anything to do with it. Because when you use the term lynching, obviously a very loaded term from our shameful past in terms of abuse toward African Americans, at least when lynching was something that was done by vigilantes, without due process, without a trial and a conviction. When you hurl that term, even metaphorically, you're saying that racial animus was motivated here. Now, in the case of CNN and Politico and the Wall Street Journal, which also raised questions about Dr. Carson's past, I've said that I thought that the reporting was inadequate to make the charges that were either explicitly made or implied. Then in the case of Politico, there was an inflammatory headline about whether he did or did not receive a scholarship offer from West Point, which said it was a fabrication, and I thought that was too strong. That's why Politico took that back. But on this question of a lynching, I'm not going to say it's a lynching. That's an opinion that I'm not going to offer, because I don't have any evidence, that the news organizations that have questioned Dr. Carson's foreign policy experience are motivated by animus toward him, and I certainly don't have any evidence that it was racial animus. More importantly, I asked Dr. Carson about it. He gave his answer, and I think it's more important to hear from the candidate on that. When the media go too far, I'm going to call them on it, but I'm going to be very careful about using such inflammatory terms.